Welcome to Sustainable Packaging with Cory Connors. I'm very excited for our guest today, Mr. John Feltz, who's the co-founder and CEO of Cruz Foam. How are you, John?
I'm good, Cory. Thanks for having me. I'm excited.
Thank you so much for taking some time. What you guys are doing is really innovative in the packaging space and in our interest of our audience, the sustainable packaging space. Can you tell us a little bit about how you got into packaging and kind of how you started this great company?
Yeah, I'll give you kind of the shorter version. So my background's in chemical materials engineering. I grew up in California, and I spent a lot of time in my early career doing environmental remediation and whatnot in my old past life, you could say. And when I went back to school, I met my co-founder, Marco Rolandi, and got exposed to this material called chitin. And at the time, he was doing a lot of research, kind of higher end research, Army, DARPA funded projects for the university. But we really connected kind of around the idea that this material had a really strong potential for bioplastic. But nobody was really looking at, at scale, and nobody was really looking at things beyond films or kind of bottles and the typical kind of plastics you kind of immediately go to in your head. But what we kind of had our light bulb moment around was the fact that we both love the ocean. We're both big surfers. And we kind of had this combined moment where we thought, as surfers, you're so tied to the ocean, you love it so much, but you're riding around on this piece of trash. And ironically enough, this piece of trash is plastic foam. And it was really this moment where like, why couldn't this be something we look at for chitin in an application? And that's really where the first, fruition of this company or idea came together. And we came down together, me and him, to Santa Cruz and kind of developed the early technology here at the university. And we tackled surfboards for about a year and gave it a pretty good go. And, it's where a lot of the passion originally lied. But when we really looked at why we were starting this company, why we saw it to be so important, it was really around the idea of plastic and getting rid of the enormous amount of, essentially trash we have that doesn't go anywhere. It sticks around for 500,000 years. And through that, we kind of pivoted and really identified to have the impact, we wanted to as a company. It was clear that this was in packaging. And when we dived in even more, it became even more apparent that nobody was looking at foams, at least in a really scalable, effective way. When you look at, the big targets like styrofoam or EPS. And that's when, we pivoted, we went to the National Science Foundation and really found a really strong fit for our technology. And it was definitely the right choice because it's, you can tell the demand and the excitement around what we're doing is there.
Absolutely is. And it seems like to me that surfers are trying to save the world. I'm totally impressed. I just interviewed Sam Bowie from FlexiHex.
Oh, nice. Yeah, I know Sam. That's awesome.
And him and his brother are surfers too. Yep. And that was their impetus for starting their company of sustainable packaging. So thank you to the surfing community.
No, it's awesome.
All the surfers always have the best intentions for the planet, and I love that. That's really cool.
Oh, it's a cool tie-in.
Yeah, that's neat. So can you tell us a little bit about Cruz Foam and how it's a natural alternative to oil polystyrene and foams like that?
Yeah, for sure. So Cruz Foam itself, we're kind of looking at and building this company around really being a leader in the biomaterials technology development. How we can look at, all natural solutions to replace, create eco-friendly solutions and replace, petroleum-based plastics. And, clearly the first thing we're looking to tackle is with, our compostable biobenign protective pack to replace, expanded polystyrene or polyethylene or polypropylene. And really what we saw when we looked at the landscape, around foam, which I kind of touched on, nobody really finding good scalable solutions, but even more focused on the protection side, cold chain, food delivery. I do think there are some good foam substitutes and solutions in those space, but when we looked at, heavy objects, electronics, expensive things, they're still using enormous amounts of EPS. Two companies we're actually, working with right now, they use 80,000 tons plus a year. And wow. So you just see, and they're desperate. They want to change, but there's just hasn't been a good solution that, it's usually performance, scale, and cost. And they all kind of work together. And there's always been a breakdown in the sustainable options that they've had. And that's when you see this coalescence really coming together between our technology and the need of the marketplace, where the market fit and how we see this getting into the commercial, scale is is very viable at this point and something we're very excited to start tackling.
Yeah, I saw you on TechCrunch recently, and that was a really cool panel you did. Was that who was the company on there with you?
It was Whirlpool.
Whirlpool.
Yeah.
Wow, what a massive! He was talking about how many.
I think he said like three dryer every 3 seconds or something like that.
I said per second. Wow,
it's astronomical.
Jeez.
It's astronomical, and that's when you see it. That's when you see that these guys, and he voiced it very well, and something that I think is often overlooked when you look at the protection of these, more expensive durable products. There is a lot of embedded carbon in those products themselves, and so understanding how to not lose that, but still make a switch to a more sustainable alternative in packaging, but keeping that perspective in mind is something that's also very important, and something we working with brands like Whirlpool and these early movers and adopters is going to be key to seeing technologies like ours scale effectively, because you need buy-in, you need people that get and want to make the change.
Well, he seemed very eager to move forward with you
Ron
guys.
was awesome. Yeah.
And I can see why it works. It's sustainable, and it's replacing, in my opinion, a less sustainable option. So can you tell us like a little bit more of the technical side of things? Is the material, is it compostable? Is it biodegradable? Is it recyclable? What's the end game for after it's used?
Yeah, no, very good question, and something that I think a lot of people are evolving and learning about as we, really start to see new technologies come into this space. And when you look at ours, where we saw a lot of potential and a lot of growth and a lot of ways to give back in the end of life, was around composting. And our material itself is a combination of this biopolymer chitin and then other bio-based, usually renewable waste streams, things like starches, low-grade fibers, other kind of additives. But it's really finding a way which we can create unique formulations of these different combined materials that can then scale effectively, but also have a viable end of life. And when we look at ours, we kind of moved away from recycling at the beginning because, well, I think there's a lot of limitations around recycling. And I think composting has a lot of growth potential and a lot of energy behind it, not only in the viability at scale, which hasn't been explored, well enough. It is changing. Legislation is definitely going that way. But I think it's also a way to really look at a viable way to control something as grand as packaging, and understanding to really dispose of something that's going all over the globe, all over the world. It's really important to really tap into all those different end of lives. And for composting, you have regular composting. What I think is really interesting is this idea of anaerobic digestion, and not only getting good fertilized content, which our material actually is fixates nitrogen. It's a very good fertilizing material. We've proven that in tests. But what's even more interesting is this idea of anaerobic digestion, where you can get biomethane. And the idea is capturing that biomethane, to not let it go into the atmosphere, because then it's just lost.
Right.
But also by capturing it, creating renewable energy, gas, to actually power and run the municipal trucks that are picking up the trash. So it's just this, you look at that story and you think, that just makes sense. And and so that's really where we see this idea of, is it compostable? Is it biodegradable? I may not tackle that because that's a very interesting conversation when you look at legislation. I would say, in all intents and purposes, our material is definitely biodegradable. But when you look at the industry and how it needs to be classified, definitely compostable, and we'd love it to go anaerobic digestion.
That's a great answer, I think, because there are still a lot of questions, and there is still a lot of work to be done by municipalities figuring out, okay, how do we work with extended producer responsibility and make sure that what these packaging companies are producing, like yourselves, will be reused or recycled or biodegraded, or, like you said, digested and
Exactly.
turned into something that is another fuel source.
Yeah.
What a brilliant concept.
It really is. It really is. And you look at Europe, and they've been doing this for a while. And there's this company that's doing it like modular for, I think it's, like not sewage, but like sanitation and toilets. But it's this company called Home Biogas, and they have this modular system that's doing it in people's homes. And we're like, this is it. Like, this makes so much sense. And it's like, why not expand that type of idea and really start looking at the other materials, the other applications, other markets where that has a viable way to take some of that waste and some of that stuff and actually reuse it, turn it into something valuable. And so it's very exciting. You can look across the whole ecosystem and you see everybody trending. in the same path, but now it's really understanding how do we come together and make this happen for real.
Yeah, great idea. And, when most people get their larger appliances delivered nowadays, they don't have pickups or a cube truck to go pick it up themselves, and they're heavy, and I get it. But what I see when you get that delivered is the delivery service removes the packaging, and that could be an opportunity for consolidation of Cruz Foam, and then taken to a special digester, anaerobic digester. So that makes sense to me.
Yeah, I won't give away all of our secrets, but I can tell you right now, we're doing a lot of work in exactly what you just said, and really proving out that, I mean, we have obviously, you look at companies like Whirlpool and others that do exactly like you just said. They'll drop it off and they take the trash or the packaging. And that's very important for them. How do they get rid of it in a way that makes sense for their business model? How can they really get value out of that? How does that not add extra cost for them? And then you have this real growth around not only composting, but some anaerobic digesters. We've gone to one in Slow and, toured the whole facility and chatted with them about all of what we're thinking. And how can we start really implementing those, doing early piloting, getting to scale, and really showing the viability. So when we see legislation coming through, when we see these bans or these EPRs, these companies like Whirlpool and others know that there's an answer out there that's viable for them. And I think that's where there's been a lot of disconnect. When you look at all the different stages along the value chain, some things are made in a closed chamber, and you don't really look at what's the impact. How does this actually get implemented? How is this actually going to be executed? And I think when we're really trying to do a step back and be a facilitator and catalyst to bring all these stakeholders together to kind of be a real, leader's a word, but really kind of, a model in a way to show that this works and it's viable and it's economical and actually adds value for all the stakeholders along the value chain. And that's what I think is really important to see this happen.
There has to be someone like you guys that guides the way and tests the model. So thank you for doing that.
No, I appreciate it.
It's so critical these days. So many people are, oh yeah, I'd love to try something sustainable, but it costs 5x, or it's we've tested it and it's not water resistant, or we've tested it and there's always caveats. There's always things that people come up with. And I think what you guys have is a one-to-one replacement potential that could be a game changer.
And yeah, and it's 100% that, because there's always going to be levels of evolution in the technology. The startup term is MVP, most minimal viable product. And so it's understanding where that MVP fits and what customers and what different partners are engaging to help you develop that further. And, people like, forward thinkers like Whirlpool understand that growth, understand that development. But I think I said in my TechCrunch, it's not going to be a silver bullet. Yes, you need to be pretty close, but it's not going to be exact cost, exact performance, and already at scale around the entire world a week after you come up with the technology. I mean, there is a staged growth into the market that has to occur.
What's the holdup? Come on, John.
Yeah, and some people just are like, it could, I don't want to say it's ignorance, but it's just not unfamiliarity, but it's understanding that. And it's understanding that's how it is across the board with almost any technology. And packaging is challenging because of the sheer, scale across the entire world. It's everywhere. And so it becomes a bigger picture when you are working with global brands and understanding how that actually needs to work on that global, scale and implementation. And so for us, we really do want to see that happen. And that's one of the ways we've, from the core, not only understanding the cost and the performance, but, the scale, and really finding a way that we can facilitate that adoption with the more drop-in technology, where we can run with existing extruders, run with existing manufacturers, and really great. constantly not evolving, constantly doing more R&D to learn more manufacturing techniques, where we can broaden our technology beyond just packaging. Maybe it's going to go to something beyond that in next year. And that's where I think when you look at materials, it's having that understanding and that kind of approach is key. And that's something we're trying to really have at the core of our technology.
I get asked all the time, why is it taking so long? Why are these sustainable alternatives taking so long? And the answer is the plastics industry has had decades to perfect what they're using, and billions of dollars, and thousands and tens of thousands of scientists. We're working on shoestring budgets and oftentimes minimal staffs, and it's just gonna, like you said, it's gonna take a little bit of time, but it'll be worth it.
Yeah, and that's a very good point, because that's what it's something maybe often overlooked is, I think like the earliest plastics were like discovered in the 50s and 60s. I mean, it's like over half a century. Like,
Yeah.
let's be realistic here. It's definitely something, but that's where we see the partnerships and really understanding how we can collaborate is really what's going to accelerate that. And that's really been our approach.
I love this idea of working with the people that are making polystyrene now, because they've got all the infrastructure, they've got the staff, they've got the equipment. That to me is a slam dunk. If you guys could perfect that, wow.
Yeah, and it's exactly the reason you said, and I've touched on it. These guys, I shouldn't say they all want to switch, because that's maybe a little presumptuous, but I would say the majority are definitely desperately looking to switch, and that's because simply the consumers have had enough. You get, especially during COVID, it's been so crystal clear. I order like 2 chairs or something, and all of a sudden I can't put any more trash in my trash bin because it's now filled with EPS. And I've had points where it took me 3 weeks to get rid of all the EPS I got, just because I had to throw away regular trash that wasn't EPS. And that's in my garage, that's in my house. It's just laying around, gets broken up, starts flying everywhere. And it's just a pain in the butt. So I think a lot of people are ready for that switch. And I think that's when you look at the manufacturing, the time is now, and the legislation's catching up. So it's definitely, it's time.
And for people listening that don't know what EPS stands for, it's expanded polystyrene. It's those white circles that fly down the street when you break up your packaging, and they drive everybody crazy. So that's EPS, polystyrene, styrofoam, whatever you want to call it. Yeah. So speaking of time frames, what are we looking at here from Cruz Foam? What's your schedule like?
Yeah, so we got a ton of exciting, fun stuff happening right now that we're hoping we can, make an announcement and let some of it out into the world here in Q4.
Cool.
But we're really, really heavy engaged right now. We're building out our in-house, larger production facility here in Santa Cruz. We're engaging with some partners from across North America, looking to set up, first scale manufacturing operations and strategic locations with our first customers, looking at the kind of appliance space. And we see that really being in a place to launch in the market around early Q1 next year. And so we're really excited with a pretty healthy demand, no doubt. We're ready to see this really start getting on the marketplace and having the impact we want to see.
Well, congratulations in advance, because you guys are doing great things, and it takes guts and it takes tenacity and it takes all the good things that good business people have. So well done.
I appreciate it, and I have to say, it's been a journey, but it's something that has definitely not been solely me by any means. I would say the team that we've built here has been absolutely incredible in the developments they've made over the last year, and really putting us in a position that I think has really differentiated us from any of the other kind of sustainable foams you've seen, and the expertise and the enthusiasm we have as a core is, I think, going to really propel us into something special. So it's been a fun ride so far.
Yeah, I've had the pleasure of communicating with Leslie Nakajima, your CMO. Yeah. And so I can attest to that. You've got a great team already around you.
That's nice of you.
And it's impressive to see when you're all working together. Good job. So what's the best way for people to get a hold of you guys? Do you have a website?
Yeah. So our website is pretty straightforward. Cruzfoam.com. All the tags on Insta and LinkedIn, Facebook, I believe, are the same. Cruz Foam or at Cruz Foam. I believe if you want to get to us by email, it's hello@cruzfoam.com. Pretty simple. I think there's a number on our website. I can't remember off the top of my head, I'll be honest, but you can find probably the least one that we respond to, I'll be honest, in this day and age, but that's also available if you'd like to shoot us a local.
It's cool when people still have a phone number. I think you don't see it very often, but why not? Why can't you?
Why not? Sometimes, and one of the things, Dave, we're in manufacturing, sometimes it's really helpful to get on the call and get on the phone. So
for sure,
it'd be a big, speed things up.
Anything else you want to speak to before we end the show?
Oh, no, I think the biggest thing is, I really appreciate having us on. I think, it's really important that, we really start having more conversations around this space and really understanding, the panel like TechCrunch. We have, I believe it's Sustainable Packaging Coalition, SPC Advance is coming up. I believe I'm doing a panel there with Temper Pack was on that one as well. I had a panel with the Temper Pack founder. So I just think, really highlighting and understanding how we can really keep these conversations and really having, important discussions around how we make this viable and really, see the future change for the better, because I think we've all around the globe are ready to stop getting giant packages with those little beads in it. I think we're ready to, and we have the technology, we have the innovations. It's just, let's make it happen. So
I agree. What's the best place to surf in Santa Cruz?
Oh, that is a very subjective question. This is going to sound very strange, but it's just because of the place that's really close to my work. My favorite place is actually ironically called John Street. So it's really easy for me to find and know what that one is. But no, it depends if you're on the west or the east side. My work's on the west side. So we've got a couple good spots over here. Swift, the Lane and John Street are kind of my go-tos.
All right. That's good advice for the surfing community. We want to support all the surfing community because you're all doing such a good thing for sustainability. We appreciate it.
No, Corey.
I'd like to thank Landsberg Aurora for sponsoring this podcast. Listeners, please take the time to review and recommend this to your friends so we can make more great episodes and spread the word about sustainable packaging. Again, this is Cory Connors, and thank you so much for your time, John. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Corey.